We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Joy in my house, joy in my house, joy. I got joy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality show with a touch of recovery. A reality show where nothing is left unsaid.
And no one is insignificant who shares.
I'm joined here by my co-host and recording artist, Lolita Robinson.
Good morning, and how are you doing today?
Welcome to another day of Joy in My House.
It's always a pleasure to be here. I look forward to it.
Well, I have some
some
traumatic news in my family's life.
Yeah.
My ex-girlfriend, who's the mother of my youngest daughter, Zaylee.
Right.
She was engaged to this really good man.
Mm-hmm.
And last Sunday, it happened Saturday night, he had an aneurysm and he passed away in his sleep.
Oh my! When you just told me that, just like I felt like I got hit in the stomach.
So my prayers go out to
his
Zenaida
family.
Macias, her family, herself, my daughter, Zaylee Starr, and his family, which he's not very close to, but you know, sometimes these tragedies bring the family together.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely. Boy, you're going to have to, pour Zen. I mean, a lot of grief and shock right now.
And for
we
my
just
daughter,
never know.
for my daughter who got close to him, who would call him a stepfather. They weren't married yet, but she really grew fond of him. He was a good man and really made an effort to do things for Zaylee and to be there for her. And it was just a tragedy.
Well, you know what? This morning, our pastor JT was talking about his close friend was just killed in a car accident on Thursday. He was 40 years old, young kids coming home from work. And, we don't want to put people on a bummer, but this life is not promised us. This is not our home. We're passing through here.
We really are. And
we
it
are
makes me reflect.
Yes, it does.
And say, man, we really have to be grateful for the time that we have. And,
yes, we do.
And in the moment, just try and do what's right and try and glorify God, because we don't have a lot of time.
We don't have a lot of time. We don't know when he's going to call us home. We don't know. We have to be appreciative of one another, like you said. And I think today's show is going to
talk about that process.
Talk about that process.
Because we want to live in peace on this earth. We want to have a little bit of that serenity and sometimes that peace that's beyond our understanding. Before we told my daughter,
how's she doing?
She's doing better than I thought. I think, as parents,
kids are resilient.
They're resilient,
yeah.
But I feel like I have to protect her. I don't want her to be hurt, and she's sad, and she's got to mourn, and it's a loss. And so I prayed with her, and I said, sometimes things happen, baby, that we don't understand on this earth, but God has an amazing plan. He really does.
Yeah, he does.
But we just don't understand, and it's okay not to understand or have all the answers. And at that age, I wouldn't be able to understand.
No.
I'd be upset. I'd be hurt.
Scared, but the whole bit, wow. Well, my heart goes out to Zen. I've been pretty close to her over the years, and well, people, this world is not promised to us. We are here. It's a gift each day, and you want to get yourself right with the Lord, and want to get yourself right with your family members, because we just don't know when he's going to call us home.
It's so true.
So
I've been kind of dealing with that. Up and down, and
it's going to change the dynamics of your friendship again now, probably.
And I'm trying to have my boundaries with her, and my
because
working
you have a
program.
fiance, yeah,
I'm working my boundaries. We're very cordial with each other, and my concern is Zaylee, and if her mom's doing well, then my daughter's doing well.
Right.
So, and it is a balance.
Yeah.
And there has to be certain rules and boundaries put in place so everything is safe, especially for my daughter.
Exactly. And respect out of
that's right.
for Ashley, and your other daughter, Layla.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got a lot going on, my friend.
Yep, I do, and it never ends.
You got a lot going on.
How was your week?
It was a good week. It was better. My sinuses were better. So, you know what? You don't realize health. That I went 3 days without. Oh God, it was miserable. I couldn't eat for 3 weeks because it was all in my ear and my jaws and everything. It was a very peaceful week because I felt better. So thank God for my health. I'm getting a routine with my niece, and so it's going pretty good. It's going good.
Just interesting. We have a great show for you today, ladies and gentlemen, and it's on amends, and it's great because we're talking about a process.
Right, we are.
We're talking about an ongoing process where we're having to unpeel the onion And it's
That's
constant.
right. That is
And
very
it's
true.
constant. And then different seasons in our lives require different processes in our lives.
Yes, they do. They do. We learned a lot from last week from
We had a great
Dr.
show for
Shea,
you.
was it?
Dr. Shea was on.
Yeah.
He is a doctor in the medical field where he does rejuvenation of the skin.
I like that.
And he has his own practice called Rejuva U in South Pasadena. And I met them through a friend of mine who I teach. And now I'm training him and his family. But his faith
that was so beautiful about
was
the show.
amazing.
Yeah, because I thought it was going to be more like, we were going to talk about cosmetic surgery, which I would have loved to. But like he said, he doesn't like to call it that. He likes to call it like living well, and because he uses natural products. But just like we're talking about his faith and what he had gone through, bullying and stuff, how transparent he was.
Right.
It was amazing to see. He really brought Christ. He wasn't promoting his clinics or whatever. He wasn't doing that at all.
He was really talking about his faith and how his passing of his father that took 18 years.
That's nuts.
He had to be faithful. And when you're educated, we think that we know more than we really do.
Right.
And especially when it comes to God, we think we now understand more. But sometimes what ends up happening, we understand less.
Right.
Because we get in our own way. And he was so faithful with this learning, his education of medical school, with his faith, which I thought was the most interesting part.
Yeah, I did too. Very, very, very nice young man. To me, he was a young man. So it was a great show, and I'm looking forward to today.
We have a great show for you today, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to know that you can link up with us on Facebook /Join My House. If you become a friend or you like the page, you receive up-to-date lineups of guests and information. We also have a Twitter page where you can tweet us with any questions or comments on twitter.com /Join My House. And we also have an Instagram page where you can follow us on Instagram, and we post pictures of what's going on the show. But we have a great show for you today.
Your mentor, kind of, really.
Yeah,
he's kind of like your accountability partner.
He's one of my accountability partners. Sponsors.
Yeah.
In Celebrate Recovery. He's out of Park Crest Christian Church out here in Long Beach. His name is Spiro. He's one of the leaders there, and he just continues to impress me with what God is doing in his life and ministry.
Yeah, really. I had a chance to sit with him before you came, so I'm looking forward to learning too, because he brings a whole lesson, and it's going to be great. So this is our recovery segment. Ladies and gentlemen. This is Joy in My House. I want you to stay tuned. We're going to come right back. Yeah.
This is Marsha Waiteka, inviting you to join me every Monday at 1 p.m. for Born to Talk, where conversation plus connections equal community. Starting Monday, April the 13th, be sure to tune in to Born to Talk with Marsha Waiteka, Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also listen live at iTunes Radio R&B, TuneIn Radio, Radio Flag, Live 365, or AHA Radio. This is Reality Radio, handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. We are LA Talk Live, and we are born to talk.
Hi, I'm Lady Jones, and I'm a certified relationship and divorce coach.
And I'm Debbie Carlin Boyle, and I'm a certified personal trainer, fitness, and wellness coach. Join us every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, for our new show, Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul, and Everything in Between.
And we mean everything.
Join the conversation on things such as living a happy, healthy, joyous life,
reinvention after divorce, parenting challenges, dating issues,
thrive with beauty and grace, and yes, we're even gonna talk sex.
Starting September, join us Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, for Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul, and become part of the discussion exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, and now live on Facebook, or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality show with a touch of recovery. I'm joined here by author of Shaped by the Master's Hand, Lolita Robinson.
Very glad to be here. Let's get started.
My co-host and our in-studio guest, Spiro. Spiro, I want to pronounce your last name right because it is a Greek name and it is Raxiotis.
You got it.
Raxiotis.
I don't think I ever asked. Spiro is just so.
Spiro is just such a powerful name in its own. But you are a Celebrate Recovery leader out of Parkcrest Christian Church, where I did most of my step studies. I started at one in Fullerton, but then ended up at Celebrate Recovery in Parkcrest.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Spiro, it's good to see you. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Well,
you've come on several times to give a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been trying to get you, every couple of months, even as much as we can, but you're busy,
Well,
when you can.
Life goes.
There you go.
Life goes.
But I want to thank you for coming on because this is a show that talks about the process of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us being part of recovery, and especially for me as my foundation to staying sober, but not just that, my foundation also to developing a closer relationship to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you really for coming on. These are some of the shows that I enjoy because it reminds me of where I'm back at.
It does.
We constantly talk about it in recovery. It's a process, so we have to go back. Sometimes I have to go back to step number 1 in my denial.
Yep.
Accepting that I don't have control over my issues.
Well, we just talked about that. We have no control over anything in life.
We really don't.
Yeah.
And until we really come to grips with that and surrender, we had a show on surrender just a couple weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
We really have to surrender that on a daily. It's just, and it creeps up right away, and next thing you know, we're back on our pedestal.
Yep.
Well, what I like about our show too is that we say inspirational with a touch of recovery, because we have a lot of people that come on and talk about their conversion with Christ, and we are new creatures in Christ Jesus. Yeah. Old things pass away, behold, all things become new. But I think a lot of people kind of get confused that they're not confused. What would you say in terms of we are new creatures in Christ, Spiro, but?
Yeah, we have that, the old man that, gets talked about in Scripture as well. It's just, even though we're changed, doesn't mean that, all the baggage of our past has been let go of. And it's all that stuff that we tend to hold on to, or we stuff down deep inside and we don't address, that can mar us. In recovery, we say, you can't heal a wound if you don't acknowledge it's there. Like if you're gonna be healed, you have to acknowledge where you're hurt, and that's what recovery is about: is acknowledging the places where you're hurt, and so you are revealing that to the light of God, so God can heal you.
Oh wow, that's beautiful.
Well, we always like to
we
like to let our audience and viewers know how we met, because it's very interesting to me how we met.
Mm-hmm.
I've been at Parkcrest for a long time. Lolita has spoken there several times, many times actually, more than several, and has given her testimony with song and praise on the special night of Celebrate Recovery with song. But one day I was trying to book the show and nobody called me back. And I like to book the show a couple weeks, 3 weeks in advance, and I had nobody. I showed up to Celebrate Recovery for me on a Friday night, and you gave the announcements.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Didn't even give your testimony.
Oh, he didn't.
Yep.
Oh.
And God just spoke to me and said, ask Spiro. So I went up to Kathy Taylor, who's the Celebrate Recovery director there and one of the state representatives.
Yeah.
And I asked her, would it be okay if I asked Spiro to come on the show? Kathy has already been on the show. She's one of our accountability partners. Said yes. You emailed me that night. That's Friday.
Yeah.
We have the show on Sunday. You emailed me that night. I couldn't sleep. That
with testimony
was so powerful. Was so heavy.
Yeah.
To this day, and I'll never forget the weight that it had, because God has really been using it, Spiro. I mean, really has. And you know that by giving it.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I validate that, because it really does.
That's beautiful for you to say that.
Thank you. Just praise the God on that.
That's not where you are. That's not where you are anymore. It's just like our Savior's not on the cross anymore. He's victorious, but still, that's where.
Yep. That's when I give my testimony, I say it's not about me. I just happen to play a part in the story of God's glory. And that's what it really is about, is how God reveals his glory through all of us, no matter how flawed we are. And I was an incredibly flawed man, and God somehow used this incredibly flawed man, and continues to use this incredibly flawed man to reveal himself.
Well, let's talk about that, because
flawed and hurt, man. I think you need to put that there in there.
Oh yeah,
too. Yeah,
that's one of the flaws.
There you go. Amen.
And let's talk about that, because you grew up in a dysfunctional household. At 11 years old, you experienced one of the worst beatings.
Yes.
You were taken away from your mom. Let's kind of just start.
Yeah, so I'm a survivor of childhood abuse, and through that process of just continue abuse even when I was taken from my mom by the state. Back in the time where that wasn't a common thing to happen, I was brought to live with my dad and my stepmom. Abuse continued in that household as well. It went from physical abuse to more just, mental and emotional abuse, and that continued all the way on to my young adult life, where eventually I gave into just, doing drugs and drinking, became a drug dealer, was homeless for a while, just that kind of life that you get into. Eventually moved out here to California to try to get away from all that, but fell right back into.
Well, because you took you with you. As
I took my junk with me. Yeah.
Yeah, geographical moves, they call it in the program.
Yeah, and eventually overdosed on LSD, and the day after my overdose, I attempted suicide.
Well, that's what I found so interesting. You think people always say, well, after that tragedy, why don't you wake up and realize what's going on? It doesn't work that way.
No.
You had abuse as a child. You got beaten severely bad that your teacher had to call child services because you were so badly beaten at that point. You move in with your mother and your stepmother and your father,
right.
And then there's a different kind of abuse where she abuses you verbally and emotionally.
Yeah.
She had no experience with children, so she didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. Your dad was emotionally unavailable.
Yeah, my dad worked all the time, and his a lot of his free time was spent gambling, either going to racetracks or going to casinos in Atlantic City, where I grew up back in Jersey. And so, yeah, my dad, once we were close, between his incredibly busy work schedule and his wanting to live life on his terms, we just didn't have a close relationship. So there was no actual guidance there. And not only that, but my father, he grew up in Greece, and his father passed away when he was 7, and he started working. So he became a support for his family at the age of 7. And so my father didn't view me as a child anymore. He viewed me as an adult, even when I was a child. And so even our interactions was him more dealing with an adult.
You need to get together and work.
There wasn't a lot of the emotional support that was necessary for a troubled child that I was. And so I never addressed all the issues of abuse and neglect that happened in my younger childhood. And that just continued
to manifest.
Yeah, just build up inside me and come out in a lot of ugly ways.
And obviously he coped too through work. And through his vices, that was probably his way of survival and not dealing with what he had to deal with, in retrospect and looking back.
Well,
right?
my dad is a quintessential sailor. He spent most of his life in the Merchant Marines. And,
wow.
To this day, he's retired now and everything, and love the guy. But this day, like whichever way the wind blows is where he's going to sail. That's just how it goes with my dad.
Well, that's interesting that you're saying that because you love him right where he's at.
Yeah.
Even though we might have now found Christ and found some level of healing, we're still able to extend some level of grace to the people that we love that might not have the same level of grace towards us.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is very
Well, he's got to
profound
be
to
shocked
say.
and surprised at your life. He's got to be.
Oh yeah, he's proud of me.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah.
How is it to tell this story? I mean, you've been on a couple of times, and each time I hear something different. How is it that you're no longer that person? You're not in that place. What's it like to keep bringing this up? Is it hard for you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
When we go through recovery, we get to our 8th principle or 12th step where we have to live it out, right? We have to be examples to others, both our actions and our words. And part of that is by giving our testimony. So I've gone to multiple CRs all around Southern California and the LA area particularly, and have freely spoken about where God has brought me from my past and how He's continuing to use me to this day, because we have to be able to show this is how God can change a life, and here is how, no matter how messed up we are, no matter how bad we may think it is, that God can take that hurt and He can use it and show His glory and how He can change the world just through one person's life.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, let's touch on that because it got pretty bad.
Ooh.
First, you were the victim, but then you took your own life into your own hands.
Yeah.
You started using drugs and alcohol, mostly drugs. In 1998, you overdosed on LSD. You were released from the hospital because it was so bad that you had to go to the hospital. You were released, and as you were walking home, you climbed up to the overpass on the 105 freeway. You felt, and I love this, you felt beyond human redemption.
Yeah.
Your words.
Take it from there.
Take us to that time again.
Yeah.
If it's okay.
the thing is, I had that false notion that everything that had been done to me as a kid, all the bad things that I was told about myself as a kid, must be true, and not only must be true, but they must be somehow my fault.
Wow.
I believe that I was the one that caused all the disruption and all the how I ruined everybody else's life, and it was somehow my fault that everything happened, and so I couldn't deal with that. I didn't know how to process that, and I also had I suffered from what's called borderline personality disorder, and one of those things is that very common with people with borderline personality disorder is suicidal thoughts and tendencies, and many people that have that disorder attempt suicide. And I was one of those, and I was also one of the fortunate people that, even though I really did try, about a 35, 40-foot drop off a freeway, I survived.
How many people do that? That is so. I mean, suicide is prevalent, but something that, well, I guess, I don't know the stats, but that dramatic.
Yeah, well, just mathematically speaking, a fall from that height should be deadly.
Because you did jump.
Yeah, I jumped and cracked my skull open, broke a bunch of bones, but didn't die.
Oh gosh, that's why this testimony is incredible.
Well, what's interesting after that, and this is interesting,
and that's to show just the desperation. I mean, just the hate, self-hate, just everything to throw yourself from there. You had to just have been. Do you believe a spirit was behind it? Do you feel like something was talking to you? Because we've had people come on the show.
No, I don't. I don't know if I could attribute that. I mean, I didn't believe in God before then, and so I couldn't say I can attribute that. And right. I don't think that. I definitely know I wasn't possessed or anything like that. I mean, besides coming off of LSD, but definitely I think that what the enemy does is that he uses what's already there.
There you
go. So
the
enemy doesn't create. God is the creator, and so the enemy seeks to destroy. And so, I can't say, oh, the devil made me do it or anything like that. That doesn't compute with me. Even now in my walk, it's the only thing that the enemy can do is try to tempt us. And so, those whispers of that you're not good enough, that may have been the enemy, but I listened and I made the choice. The enemy didn't make me do it. I made the choices. And so that's part of the process of recovery, is coming to realize where we did mess up.
Yeah, where we had our decisions and how that caused the consequences of our decisions. Because you jumped off, you survived off the 105 freeway, survived, and then somebody got placed in your life that came and shared Christ with you.
Yes.
And at that point, you didn't want to hear any of that.
Yeah, no. My buddy Mike, and shout out to Mike if he happened to tune in.
Mike. Hi, Mike.
I knew him before I had attempted suicide, and we were friends, but we never talked about God. He'd learned not to bring that subject up with me because I didn't believe in God. I called him eventually one day after several months of living in this pain after my attempted suicide, and eventually I got to ask him the question of why would God save someone like me?
Wow.
Mike kind of paraphrased the scripture for me, which became one of my life verses, which is, he causes the rain to fall on the righteous and unrighteous, and the sun to shine on the good and wicked alike. And so that's from Matthew 5:25, and I took that to mean that, like, no matter how messed up we are, no matter how good or bad we are, whatever it is, God loves everybody equally. And that's when I made that night my first attempt at honest prayer to God. And like most prayers, when you first start praying to God, you're more demanding a request or anything, or you're making some kind of wish fulfillment. And really, my desire, my demand from God was just to ask him for sleep, because I'd spend months without being able to sleep, because I would fall asleep, relive that fall, and wake up with my body shaking in shock. I could never sleep, and I would spend hours crying on end because I was in this, spiritual death, but I was, emotional and physical pain. And that night I fell asleep, and I slept a full 7 hours, which hadn't happened in months. And I woke up, and I was at such complete peace. I can still, even right now, I can recall how sun was coming through the blinds in the window, and I felt such this profound sense of peace that God had answered my prayer. I was weeping, and it was the first time I had wept in my life where it wasn't out of pain or sorrow, it was out of joy. And because I was feeling the presence of God, and I have never had that dream since, ever.
Oh wow, I was just going to ask you
18
that.
years later, just
Has
celebrated
it
my
been that
18
long?
years.
18 years.
18 years.
Wow.
Hi, Spiro. Wow.
And 18 years later, I have not had that dream since. Well, not 18 years since the dream, but 18 years in my recovery. But
Right.
that would probably be around October-ish is when I'll have my 18 years since I've never had that dream.
Oh, congratulations.
Wow.
That is a testimony.
Yeah.
You
Because
know,
God
some people,
did answer your prayers.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Some people ask for, these big, huge miracle peace. And that's what Jesus promised. My peace I give unto you. I never realized. When I was a new Christian, I used to think, okay, peace, all right. But man, when you have drama,
When you
chaos, what's peace, serenity?
Yeah.
I think we talked about that.
And we talked about that last week.
Yeah.
Having had the tragedy with my daughter's stepdad, and I prayed with her and I asked God to give us that peace that's beyond our understanding, even in this crazy situation, for Him to be able to give us that peace. And I think He gave her that peace. I'm still kind of struggling with that, where I'm like having to let go. She's okay, because I want to run over there and protect her and defend her and don't hurt my baby. But at the same time, she's got to go through that process, and I got to let my hands go and let God. So you did that.
And you had the peace of God. That was the most precious gift for you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wow. Girl.
Well, having gone through that, you accepted Christ. Let's talk about that moment, accepting Christ. When did you come to Christ where you really feel like you felt God's presence, but you had to make that choice of allowing God into your heart?
Yeah. Well, Mike, after, I called Mike and told him what happened, and he, would start coming over and reading scripture with me and praying with me. And eventually, when I was
How
strong
long
enough.
did Mike do this? How long was this
Well,
that he is trying to
if you want to know the exact number of months,
Yeah.
I attempted suicide in August of 98. I was baptized in Huntington Beach in April of 99.
But I'm talking about prior to him trying to share Christ with you.
We didn't talk God.
Okay, but
that was
when you
a
did,
definite
wow.
no. That was
So
that
that
was one of
started
my-
when you attempted
when
suicide.
suicide, then he was there, the
Yes.
labor in the field.
Yep.
Okay.
And he, he'd come over and read scripture with me. Eventually, when I was strong enough to sit long enough, he'd get me in a wheelchair and bring me in his car to Bible study, and eventually from Bible study start bringing me to church. I knew I had to be on board with what God was doing. I was changing so much so quickly, and as much as poor guys that were in my Bible study,
I like this part of the story.
They would pray before Mike would come get me, and then after Mike dropped me off, he'd go back to the Bible study and they'd pray for me again.
Oh, wow.
Because I would push back and I would challenge so much, but at the same time, I wanted more of what God was giving me, is that sense of peace. And I knew that God was changing my life. And by the time in March, I remember asking pastor, his name is Scott Henman, and I asked him, what's the deal with baptism? Like, why do we have to do it? I got baptized as a baby at Greek Orthodox. Like, why do I have to, what's the deal? And he very simply said, you don't have to, but it's an act of obedience. God asks us to do it. And if you have the opportunity to, then you want to be obedient to God. And right then and there, I heard God telling me, I'm asking for your obedience. And I said, okay, let's do it. And so we set a date and we went to the beach and I got baptized in the beach.
Oh,
Wow.
Spiro. I'm glad you mentioned his name too.
Yeah.
Because it's important. These are landmark people, strategic people that God puts in our lives. And, if they're not famous or whatever, we talk about that a lot. That's huge. These people were instrumental in your name being written in the Lamb's Book of Life and mentoring you and showing you about Jesus.
Because I feel the same way for
Good.
Lolita.
Yeah,
Because she's the one that led me to Christ. She's the one that introduced me to Christ. She was also the one that baptized me.
That's
that
awesome.
was so cool.
How amazing. It's just this big plan that I would have never known, teaching Lolita's son in my home in Fullerton, many years ago, that she would be so instrumental in changing my life.
Well, you changed mine too.
You think it's just, a friendship, all right, I'm training her son and he's doing martial arts, all great, fine and dandy.
Yeah.
In the physical realm, in the physical world, but in the emotional and spiritual world, God placed her there as an angel to lead me closer to Him. And when we talk about not understanding God's plan, I would have never fathomed the depths of our relationship.
Right.
It's amazing. And God didn't stop there, because you then got plugged in. Talk about getting plugged in to celebrate recovery.
And there was a special lady in the months who was instrumental to love you through.
Oh, yeah. Well, my wife, Jen. And,
that's,
hey, babe, if you're watching.
That's incredible, though, really.
And,
she loved some pretty places that weren't very lovable from
Oh,
what I
yeah,
can remember.
definitely. Definitely. she carried me through a lot of that junk, and she did make it clear that she was going to do it again. But
Good
so
Jen.
let's put that out there. She was very, very stringent on that. But yes, she loved me through when I was probably my most unlovable, especially when as we go through the process of recovery, we have to share about how we messed up in life and everything else. So we're going to get to in our lesson in men's, and to be able to love me through that entire process and continue to support me even to this day. My ministry in CR, which came to CR when I was in my 12th year of recovery, and through my church at Parkcrest. And at first I was like, oh yeah, I'll just, I've been, walking with God for 12 years and everything, been in recovery. I'm going to use all that knowledge to, to help out. That's what I'm going to do. And
oh boy,
yeah,
just you helped out already.
Pride cometh before the fall. So yeah, there was a bit of an arrogance with me, one of my character defects at work, where it's like, oh yeah, I got everything all together and everything.
Oh, okay. I'm hearing it differently. Okay, so you were kind of like,
oh yeah, he's got 12 years of program.
He's
sober. Yeah, I'm gonna help.
I've heard this story before.
Yeah,
I'm gonna help all these flawed people, and I show up, and while God was using me to help others through me being a service, God has changing me, and eventually I came on to the leadership team at CR, and for the past several years, coming on 6 years now, God has continued to stretch me beyond means that I thought I could be stretched, put me in the places I didn't think I needed to be. And,
I say that again, places where I didn't think I needed to be.
Yeah, but it's been an amazing journey. I'm getting involved in ministry and being part of other people's lives, and the messiness that can come from that. There's such beauty in how God can enter into places of hurt and heal, and how we can be instrumental, even in ways that we don't realize. You're just showing up and doing stuff like running a men's open share group. I was helping lead the men's chemical dependency group, or leading a step study, whatever it is, and all you're doing is providing a safe place for people to walk through their junk and to share about their stuff. And you think it's just a simple thing, but through that act of service, like you're touching these people's lives. You're providing hope just by showing up on a regular basis, showing that God's still at work in your life. And even though maybe you got everything together and you're struggling with stuff, God's still working on you and changing you. And that provides that moment of hope where people are struggling. They're like, I want more of what he has. I want to be that kind of guy that he is. I'm like, I'm a messed up guy. Don't be like me.
That's how I felt.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I felt
Very
like
well
I
said.
wanted what Kathy Taylor, when I first met her and booked Lolita for her event, I wanted this peace and this transparency that she had. She had no guilt for it. And I was like, man, and she shared some stuff with me in a meeting that I was like, and you direct what? Like, you're part of a church? But she was she had such a peace that I was like, I want that. But she explained to me what she had gone through to get there.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, I guess I have to go through that. Lolita's the one that pushed me. But
no, I think Kathy was the mama bear on that one. She got me in there too, because I was from the secular 12-step groups. And I figured, well, I don't need that. And then same thing. And God put me in there, and I just picked myself off the ground, and Celebrate Recovery is awesome.
So when Kathy approached me and said, you and Spiro should lead the group, I was like, no way do I want to do that. But like you said, when we put ourselves in that situation of being a service, and what do we really do? Like you said, we really just provide a safe place where they're on time, where they're consistently, and that gave them a sense of hope. And I realized now in retrospect, that's what was giving me hope. These people keep showing up to these uncomfortable meetings talking about their stuff. Like, I don't like doing this, but you guys kept showing up. The leaders kept showing up, which said, well, then I must have to show up too.
That's right.
And now as a leader, I guess I just have to show up, and then God does other work in other ways, but continually does work.
Yep.
Because he continually did work in your life.
Yes.
Where after you became a leader, let's really quickly talk about what Celebrate Recovery is before I go on, because I want our audience and viewers know. Before we go on to our message of amends, it's a Christian 12-step program with Jesus as the foundation.
Yeah, it's a Christ-centered recovery group, and ideally it's family-centered. Not every CR can do this, but CR is supposed to be for the entire family, and so there's ways where CRs that have not only do they have their adult groups where you go through the 12 steps or 8 principles of recovery, but they have a celebration place, which is where you can have your children from preschool to elementary age going through all 12 steps, just like the parents, and then the landing, which is CR for teens, and so the teens are going through all 12 steps, and so you have hopefully places where Celebrate Recovery is a family-based ministry where everybody in the family is going through all 12 steps all at the same time.
That's beautiful.
And it's just where healing happens at all levels, where like with your teens or even your elementary age students, you get what's called pre-recovery. So the hope is that maybe one day we could phase out Celebrate Recovery, because we've reached so many children that children are not having to go through the messiness of life as adults, because they've received all the tools of recovery early on from their childhood. But it's just that'd be an amazing thing to have happen. But that's what Celebrate Recovery is. It's a Christ-centered 12-step group, but it's more than just a program. It's a ministry. I always tell anybody that I go into step study with, or even my sponsee, I constantly remind them, the goal is not recovery. The goal is Christ.
Yeah,
Or only thing that we're doing is using the tools of the 12 steps or the 8 principles in order to further our relationship with Christ. Anybody that honestly follows Christ in any way, shape, or form is living their life based off of the biblical principles that are represented in the Celebrate Recovery. And all this is doing is providing a structure and a safe environment for people to deal with whatever they're dealing. It doesn't have to necessarily be drugs or alcohol, but it can be anything from being codependent to dealing with food issues to gambling
Sex
or whatever it
yeah.
is, lust addiction. No matter what it is, relationship issues for women, no matter what it is. So and so it's not just that place for those people; it's a place for all people.
And I think that's great that you're saying that, because we all struggle with, I'm dealing with resentment, with fear, with anger, and some of these principles apply directly to all my issues, which now I identify as an anger. You have anger issues, resentment issues. I have fear issues, stepping out of my own comfort zone, things of that nature. But let's talk about one of those principles, which is Principle 6, which is evaluate all my relationships, offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me, and make amends for harm I have done to others, except when to do so would harm them or others. That is Principle 6.
And it's the 8th step in the regular 12-step
Yes,
programs.
and we're going to get to that too.
What am I talking about?
Yeah.
We've got the king here. Yeah,
I'm no
take it
king.
away. But I just mean in terms of, humble king, servant, son, in terms of recovery.
We'll go with that.
Because I love the question you posed.
Yeah, you guys do.
The question that you posed was, have you ever had to apologize for something, didn't know how to go about it, owning up to what you did? And I think it's so relevant right now, because we make so many mistakes, but yet we sweep it under the rug because we don't even know how to own up to it, let alone what to do about it. Let's talk about that.
And so that's what amends is really about, is owning up to the stuff that we've done wrong. And it's not just, I'm sorry. Even my kids, even with my kids, I just don't want them to apologize, but I want them to acknowledge in what way have they hurt whoever they're apologizing to. And so I say, well, why are you sorry, right? And that's what we're getting at here, is the why we're sorry. And sometimes even getting to the point of what people have to hold on to is like, oh wait, I don't want to have to say I'm sorry, and how do I make up for all that stuff? I don't even know how to get there. The whole point is to get willing to do that, and not necessarily that you're going to do it right away, but to get willing to do that. And there's a couple of scriptures that we have to hold on to here that's provided, which is where it's Jesus is calling us to reconciliation, and that's what this is about in this particular step. So in earlier steps, we work on our relationship with God, and in the middle steps, God starts changing our lives. And now this step is the beginning of the process of God working through us to change the lives that we've been in contact with. And the scriptures that he provides us are happy are the merciful, which is Matthew 5:7, and happy are the peacemakers, Matthew 5:9. And as you said earlier, this is also step 8, and it's in step 8, it literally says we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all.
And like you were saying, I think that willingness is very important at this part. The willingness to say, all right, this is my fault, but what am I going to do about it? And in our program, in Celebrate Recovery, it says make a list. Sit down and you're going to have to write it down, which I think is powerful, especially for me being such a visual learner, is that I need to sit down and write it. I can think about it all day, but if I don't sit down and write it, it doesn't stick for me. So that willingness, even if it's uncomfortable for me, to sit down and write it, I think is a powerful part in the step,
Yes.
which is we're willing to make amends. Because Jesus encourages us in chapter 6, verse 31, where it says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yes. Yeah, and because basically when someone's wronged us, oftentimes we think about getting back in terms of we want some sense of justice, or we want retribution,
Right.
and it always doesn't feel better when it happens. But
that getting back at somebody,
Yeah.
It always feels better when they sincerely realize what they did was wrong and they apologize.
Yeah, but that's the other half of it. We have to be on the other side, which is what I think you're talking about, right? When we're looking at other people who have offended us.
like me being when I was a kid, and my stepmom would put me down all the time and make fun of me and everything else. Like, I would do stuff just to hurt her, right? Just to get back at her, just lash out, because that was how I got my sense of justice, retribution, and it doesn't work that way. That doesn't build relationships. That destroys relationships. And so the part of this process is us recognizing how we've messed up. I call it building my side of the bridge.
There you go.
And so it's not that's one of the later parts of amends, but it's we work on our end of things to reconcile our relationship with others, and we work on where we're at in our lives through being willing to meet with that person halfway. And so we, no matter what's happened, is we have to recognize in what ways have we messed up, in what ways did we deal with things, and sometimes my abuse that it comes with the forgiveness of, which is a lesson that comes after amends, but we have to recognize that there's a healing that happens where when we are going to make an amends to other people or anything, it's a healing that happens in us, and it's not necessarily going to change their lives or change our relationship, but it's going to change us.
And I think that's important.
I can remember that when I made my list and continue to make lists. I think people think, okay, I went through the steps. I'm like, no, you are always in the steps. You don't graduate. But there was such a freedom in looking at my part, because most times, other than when abuses from children, we don't have any part in that. But there was always something that I had added to the resentment, something, my mouth getting in the way, or attitude, or something I did to contribute. So I had to look at my part of it.
Yep.
Is that kind of what you're talking about in terms of,
Yeah, because you talk about the last step was working in our relationship with God. And this is where the real work happens in our relationships with others.
Yes.
So we've worked on our relationship with God, and now it's working on the relationship with others, because Jesus places a great deal of importance on this.
Yes.
And he says that in Matthew 5, verses 23 to 24. Therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there at the altar. Go first and be reconciled, then come back and offer your gift. And I think this one is sometimes misunderstood. It's very easy to misunderstand this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what Jesus is talking about for our atonement or sacrifice that is to be made.
Yeah. So when Jesus is talking, he's talking to Jews, and at that point in time, in order for you to make up for how you've messed up in life, how you sinned, whether you've hurt other people or whatever, you got to go before God, and so you had to make a sacrifice, a gift of atonement. And Jesus is placing great deal of importance on our relationships with the people that we have in our lives, where he's saying, if you're going to come atone before God, stop what you're doing. If someone has something against you, your brother or sister, or whoever that is in your life, if they have something against you, stop what you're doing, go and be reconciled. In other words, go and apologize, go and make your amends to them, then come and become right before God. And that is, to me, was eye-opening as far as the importance, because you think, oh no, I got to be right before God before I'm going to be dealing with other people or anything else. And
or it's a show too. In a sense
that sometimes it's true. Like, we need to, yes, we do need to come before God, and we do need to acknowledge that we need God's power in our life. But before we can reconcile between us and God, Jesus is saying there's a huge importance in working that out with other people first, and then you come and offer yourself before God.
And I think that's great.
And some people think, it's an act going to church. They think going to church and doing religious things makes them clean inside. But Jesus said, no. You're right. That's exactly what you were saying.
And I think it's powerful because Jesus does say, before we ask for his forgiveness, are we forgiving? Own up to what we did.
Yeah.
Go and own up to our wrongs, and then forgive others. as we want to be forgiven.
Yes.
And it's very interesting because it's almost counterintuitive,
Yeah.
counterproductive in our minds, but it's really a way of getting that closer relationship to him by forgiving others. How interesting.
Well, like
Yeah.
God said, how can you say you love me who you haven't seen and yet hate your brothers?
Yep.
That's right.
So he's like, no, you put your money where your mouth is. You got to be loving one another and working this
Yep.
out. I'm glad you brought that back. So that was kind of a tradition with the Jews back there when they were offering sacrifices.
That was the whole point of offering the sacrifice, was
Wow,
to
okay.
atone for your sin. And Jesus saying, like, stop what you're doing. First, go and be reconciled to your brother and sister. In other words, go and acknowledge how you've caused damage. And in that way, Jesus is calling us to reconciliation. So we work on living out the idea of reconciliation, how God is going to reconcile us to himself. We're going to do that with other people. And
That's right.
we're designed to be in community. We're designed to be in community with others. And if we're going to take even the literalizations that Paul gives, or we're all part of the body of Christ, we shouldn't be hurting our own body. The body doesn't have to hurt itself. Instead, so how can you go and like hurt your brother or sister? If you've gotten hurt, you're going to get healed. You're going to seek healing. And it's the same thing with our relationships, where we need to be able to seek healing in those relationships, where we have to say, I've hurt you in some way. Here's how I've hurt you. And I'm acknowledging that, and I'm going to let you know that I'm sorry for that. And there's lots of different ways that can end up looking when you're making an amends. Sometimes it is just the acknowledgement, I've hurt you. There's no way I can make up for what's happened. I call it sometimes a living amends, where like with my wife, with years of betrayal, with lies about me doing drugs and everything I was doing, my attempted suicide and everything else, like apologizing to her and making amends to her for all that stuff. Like, hey babe, here's all the stuff I've done wrong in life. How do you make up for all that, right? How do you make up for doing all that? And the only way is, not only do I have to say that I'm sorry for doing it, but now I have to live it out. So every day that I serve her as her husband, every day that I live out my life as her husband and as a father to our children, is a continual exercise in living out my amends to her. So no longer going to be that guy that I used to be. Instead, I'm going to continue to be a new person in Christ and serve you and serve God through serving you. And I have to do it every day.
And you talk about that because you said, it explains in the step, we first must be willing to admit the hurt and the harm. And then the next step is to make the list of the harm. And this is a good time to be in prayer, a good time to really ask God to reveal himself. Because if we get in the way, we didn't really hurt anybody. They hurt us. But this is a good time to also have a sponsor. And I wanted to touch on this very quickly. What is a sponsor?
So a sponsor is kind of like a coach, right? And so a sponsor is someone that you're going to go to that's further along in the walk you are, whatever area of recovery you have in life that you're dealing with. And so it's someone that's more knowledgeable than you are in whatever you're dealing with. And there's someone that they're not going to run your life for you, but when it comes, like, for example, I need to make this amends list, and you need to actually go through that process. It's good to be able to go to someone and say, is what I'm doing right? This is how I want to make my amends. Is this the right way? And they're going to say, yeah, they're going to help you basically call the plays like a coach does. And so it's saying, Joel, you know how to, about this with your training, and, you're going to train your fighters. It's, hey, you might, if this is going to happen with this person, you're going to want to, change this way instead of what you're doing. You're helping course correct. And or it's, hey, I went and did this thing, it didn't work out well. Why is that? And your sponsor will be like, well, it didn't work out because you didn't apply these things, or you didn't do these things. The next time you go through life, or this situation comes up, here's a better way of examining how we can go through that. And that's what a sponsor does.
You might want to touch on, what does it mean by when to make amends except for when to injure others?
And that's up on the list because that's very important. We get a little lost in that.
Yeah. So how would you? How would that look to you in terms of?
So the part of that step is you want to be safe. So for example, it could be anything where, and in any situation where you're going to be placing yourself at harm, or by revealing what's going on, you may actually jeopardize the lives of other people or hurt that person. Sometimes the people that we're going to make amends to, there's mutual hurt on both sides, and that person may not be willing to acknowledge what's gone on. And by you bringing it up, it's going to damage them in some way that it could be cause further harm. Sometimes a really
like
basic example
or something.
A basic example might be like a spouse that's been, a wife that's been abused by her husband, and maybe she wasn't perfect in her relationship, and she knows that she said and did things to be spiteful or hurtful or whatever else. Not that she ever did anything to deserve what she received as far as abuse, but yet she knows that she messed up in some way, and she knows that she would have to apologize for those things. But that person's a dangerous person for her to be in contact with.
That's good.
And so you don't want to enter into a situation where it can cause further harm. Maybe as a child you were abused by a parent, and that parent is still an abusive person. Maybe they're still in an unhealthy place. Approaching that person may not continue to be healthy for you.
That's good. I like
even
that.
though you're willing to make an amends and say, hey, I did these things wrong, as a kid. Even though my mom abused me and everything else, like I would, curse at her, I would spit at her in her face, a lot of these things. And it's like, as a kid, I couldn't go up and say, hey, Mom, I'm sorry I did that thing, because next thing you know, she might get upset and lash out again.
Right.
So same thing is you have to make sure that it's going to be a safe place. And that's what a sponsor can help guide you towards is this a safe person, or how could we go about this that's going to make it as safe as possible for you to make the amends? You were just being willing to make the amends. Sometimes you're going to write a letter, and you might mail that letter out, or you might write a letter and read it to your sponsor, and that sponsor acts as a proxy for you.
So you might not need to do all that.
Or just having an accountability partner.
And I wanted to ask
or about one other thing too, not to throw you off, but like say for instance, maybe you've had an affair with your friend's husband or something.
Right.
That's not the thing to go to your friend and tell her, I'm sorry, because she might not know, and that could blow up a whole lot of. But I never thought of it from the standpoint of what you were talking about. What were you going to say?
I wanted to ask you, because Lolita, you work on sponsoring quite a bit, and a lot of people really trust you and you mentor. What else is another aspect of a sponsee relationship? Because being placed in that position is very sensitive.
It is.
What is another aspect of it? I was looking at like encouraging and inspiring.
It's inspiring, but not being intrusive. And not like that's what I like about the secular, and I'm sure they do it too in CR. Everybody grows at their own pace and time, so you can't force to expect them to be at a certain place. You give them the space to, but a lot of times it's in how they deliver it. Like my girls are wanting to come and talk to me, and they want to make an amends, and they want to say stuff, but it's still raw, and it's still. They need to kind of process it. Can you guys relate to that?
I think having grace, the way people had grace for us through our process, we need to have grace for our sponsees as they go through the process. That there's a learning curve, and there's going to be some mistakes and some rough, like you said, edge. I think was great the way you said it. They're very raw. I know I was as raw as could be. I remember thinking, well, I'm just going to go and tell them just like a Band-Aid. But then my sponsor told me, no, you can't do it that way. You got to pray about it first. You got to have your word seasoned as well to deliver.
Did you have that too?
Well, that's part of the amends process is relying on God's timing,
and that's what was next.
So that's part of it is knowing when is the right time, and that's where prayer comes into place, and that's where having your sponsor can be helpful, or having an accountability partner, where even like you get to the point where having an accountability partner is, hey, I'm going to make an amends to so and so, and God's really telling me I should do it in this time. Can you continue to pray for me? And then they're going to follow up and say, hey, you told me by the 25th God said that you're going to have this meeting, and you actually get to be one-on-one with so and so. Did you do it that day? And or you called them up the day before. Hey, I'm praying for you. I know that you're going to be meet with so and so tomorrow. Just so you know, I'm going to be praying during that time, or that kind of stuff. And that's what having an accountability partner or sponsor can be for.
You got somebody with you in the trenches.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on this because we are running a little bit out of time.
This is really good.
And we're not going to go to a commercial break right now because we're going to go right through. But we talk about God's fulfilling His promises. This process is one of the steps that people get very fearful of and don't want to go through because it's so difficult. This is one of the big ones. Yep. But let's talk about the promises that God actually fulfills once we do something like this. What would happen in your life once you went through this process and made your amends, Spiro?
Always, receive healing. That's for sure.
And that's a big one.
Yeah, it is.
Relieve the burden in ourselves.
All the resentment that you build up, the regrets that you have, all those things, you're letting go of all that because you are willing to say, I messed up in life, right? And you sort of acknowledge it and you deal with it, and you actually sometimes can even approach that person. And so like with my wife, we have this loving, enriched relationship.
Wow.
Because I'm not living with regrets like, oh my gosh, I did this and I never dealt with it and I never never told her about it, and that sits festering inside. Or like with my parents, I have a relationship with my parents.
That's
I don't have a relationship with my stepmom now. She passed away, but
I remember the cancer, right?
Yeah, she passed away from cancer. But I got to make an amends to her, and it was one of those rare moments where not only did I make an amends, but she was able to extend forgiveness to me, and then she made her own amends.
Wow.
And she apologized for all the stuff that she had done, and recognized how she wasn't perfect as a mom, how she could have done a lot better, and we had this beautiful reconciliation of our relationship where for several years I knew what it was like to really have a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so to this day, I just went on vacation with my birth mother.
What?
Yeah, we went on vacation to San Diego.
You didn't save the best to last. Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. We still see each other. We for family events and all that. But yeah, we went on vacation. It was her, my brother, his son, and my family, and we stayed in a 2-bedroom timeshare she has, and in San Diego we went to the zoo, we went to SeaWorld, and we're able to have a relationship.
Well, that's amazing how God
That's huge.
repaired
That's
something that was so damaging
Yeah.
when you were a child, and now come full circle. And now you have a relationship with her where you have a sense of peace.
That's a big
And we're not even going to talk about her end of it, but just you yourself, you're able to be in a relationship.
You did your side of the bridge.
And God hasn't stopped there, because we're running out of time. But I wanted to touch on, you're not only a part of Celebrate Recovery, some amazing doors have opened up with another ministry. Let's touch on that before we go, because we have about 6 more minutes.
This coming weekend, I'm actually going to be doing something weird. I'm leaving my family for the first time for several days to go to my training, where I'm joining up with Crew. And if you're not familiar with Crew is what used to be called Campus Crusade for Christ. And I'm joining their high school ministry team out here in the Los Angeles area, where I'm going to be helping part-time to go on campus in some of these high schools, and also help provide some project management behind the scenes to help coordinate all the efforts that all the different crew clubs that we have going on in different high schools and what they're doing.
But what's fascinating is
congratulations,
that
that's beautiful.
They don't usually allow the husband to do it alone, or the
recently
wife to
changed
do it
that.
alone. They need both the partners.
That was the rule.
That was a rule, but that changed.
Yes.
Which allowed you.
Yeah, so
to
it's
be a
just
part
one of
of
those things where I joined up a Crew as a volunteer, and had this been several years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do this because my wife is a teacher. That's a full-time job in and of itself, and
then feel called to do exactly
and
what
then
you're
we have
doing.
kids with one of our kids requires a lot of hands-on, and so. It wouldn't have been really possible for her to join Crew with me. And a year before I joined, or it was over a year before I joined, they changed that rule to where a spouse can join without both spouses joining, as long as the other spouse is supporting. Of course, my wife is very supportive in what I'm doing, and in this new season, new change in life. And so, I was able to now join up with them without that requirement that would have hindered us before. It's just amazing what God does with this. Lots of things happen where they used to not have this part-time position where you could be part on campus, part administrative, and it used to be you could do only one or the other. You're either on campus or you're providing admin, and they created a position where you could do kind of both.
Well, they're getting more flexible. Seems like God is showing them some stuff too.
Yeah, and it just all, and that was a recent change that happened before I joined up as well, and just there's a lot of little things like that that fall into place as as I was coming on board with them. So I volunteered with them at the end of the school year last year. I'm going into training where I'm going to be interning with them, and after my training, that's where I'm going to start, because part of being in this ministry team is you're basically a missionary. You're on mission at these high school campuses, and so like any other kind of mission, you have to receive support. You have to generate support, and that's what I'm going to be doing while I'm interning with them. I'm going to be seeking support in order to actually receive funding for what I'm doing. That's going to help alleviate burden. So I'm going to have to get some childcare for our kids. I'm going to be driving around a lot, and being the real enjoyment is that it's going to enable me to be a part of the kids' lives, particularly in some areas like the inner city areas of Poly High, where I'm going to be having Bible study with students that are dealing with a lot of junk, and hopefully God will be able to continue to use me in my experiences of growing up and damaged relationships, and now my experience in recovery and my walk with Christ, in order to help touch and affect the lives of some very hurt kids.
That's beautiful.
Wow. Well, if you want to find out more information
Go ahead.
on Spiro and hopefully become one of the sponsors and fund him, you can find more information on his Facebook, Spiro, why don't you tell us your Facebook, what it's under?
It's just my name, Spiro Raxiotis. So
Spiro Raxiotis. I want you to find him on Facebook, link up with him, become a friend, and support him. Before we close out the show, we like to ask you, Spiro, especially you've been on the show before. Joy in my house. Between our struggles and our praises, we still have this joy. What does joy in my house mean to you? And today,
it means that I get to hear God, and through that, I'm being obedient, and that's an amazing thing to me to actually know that God is alive and He's working in my life and working in the lives of others, and that's just been blowing me away. Where God has just been showing up, and I didn't expect to be doing stuff like joining crew or anything else like that. That wasn't on my radar at all. And God is saying, here, you have to go do this thing, and I'm listening.
And I want to thank our little silent co-host, Elizabeth. My little niece has been there. She's been co-hosting and praying for us, hopefully.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here on Joy in My House. Thank you to my co-host, Lolita Robinson, our in-studio guest, Spiro, Celebrate Recovery leader, Richard, our engineer and one of the owners of the show here. We want to thank you for being a part of the joy that we have in our house. Catch us live every Sunday
Labor Day
here
next week.
at noon, and we will have a special show for you next week.
For Labor Day.
This is Joy in My House. You guys have a great and blessed day.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.
Joy in my house, joy in my heart.